AEW Grand Slam took over Australia. Not in the way that they would have wanted to initially, but still they were there. There's been a lot talked about this show. When you sit down, if you just sat down and watched this in a vacuum, like in 10 years, when Conrad Thompson is doing AEW retrospectives on his podcast with Cool Hand Ange, that they're going to go back and watch the show and you know what? There was a lot of negative talk around this thing. I enjoyed it. It's a fun wrestling show. I don't know why. That's a really bad accent. It doesn't sound at all like Conrad Thompson. And I actually really enjoy the show, so I don't know why I did that. But if you just watch this without knowing any of the outside whatever, this was a fun wrestling show. I think I was putting too much expectations on it this week because it was a gigantic event, or supposed to be a gigantic event to start. And so that stayed in my head. It's like, oh, you need to build it, need to whatever. It was a fantastic collision, and that's what it eventually turned into. The problem is it was collision, and you get a lot of the, I don't want to say bait and switch or anything like that, but there was a lot of people frustrated that they spent stadium pricing on a not stadium show, and that's what they got. And so there was a lot of frustration around that. There is also, I think, a level of embarrassment around AEW where you advertised that you were doing a stadium show in Australia, and then you had to fill up an arena. And that sucks. And that is very emblematic of where AEW is right now. I will say, that arena looked cool. I didn't think that there was any issues with how the place looked. I thought it came across as a relatively important television show. I know there was a lot of talk about the ring. We'll get to that in a little bit. But overall, I thought the presentation of this, and I thought everything was good. And then we got a very good wrestling show out of it. It began with Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay taking on Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita, and that match delivered. I thought this was a really, really fun match. There we go. Sorry. Long stream. Need some water. Apologies. Also, said this last time, Sea of Dead sticker. You get one of these when you order anything from seaofdead403.car, presenting sponsor. Really, really fun match. Kenny Omega has a bit of a slip going over the top rope on the one tope, but aside from that, this match delivered. The crowd was really into it, and it was fun, and all four performers looked awesome. I also like that it sets things up now for Revolution, where Omega is going for the International Championship, Ospreay is going for Fletcher in a steel cage. All of that sounds like it's going to be epic, all of it sounds amazing, and all of it is logical coming off of what we just had. So, cool. Makes sense. Then we get to the TBS Championship as Mercedes Mone goes up against Harley Cameron. And you guys know I was not in favor of this being the match. I thought that Harley Cameron should have been maybe the sidekick for someone maybe a bit more legitimate as a title challenger going into this one. I will say, though, this was fun. Harley Cameron really won me over in the build-up to all of this in a way that I didn't expect at all. She held her own in this match. You go into the build-up for it. She has that really serious promo on Dynamite where she's like, I didn't know I could do this until I could. And then she speaks in Mandarin for a second there and does all of those things. She's really entertaining, and she was able to get serious when the moment called for it. And then in the ring, I thought she was fine. So there is something here with this one. I still don't love the idea of building up a challenger using one victory and a hand puppet, but we got a very entertaining character out of Harley Cameron. And I think there is a lot there with this character. And so this was a little bit of a, hey, why did it take this to get to this point with her? She is really entertaining on a show that kind of needs it. So why are we just having her be a laughingstock back there? Let's use this now. And so this is the thing with this show. And it's something that WWE stumbled with a little bit. Like when they were doing all the international shows and are still doing the international shows. You have Alba Fire and Isla Dawn win the women's tag team titles in their hometown. Obviously, that didn't go well because one of them's not with the company anymore. So, not ideal at all. And so you get into that sort of a thing where, okay, do we give them the hometown pop? Do we just whatever? And something like this is good to get a spotlight on someone who wouldn't necessarily have that. See what you have with them, and now see if you could advance that going forward now. So now you found out you have something with this. Use it. You don't just have her be a comedy character on Collision now. There's something here. Take advantage of it. Use that character now. I thought she was great. Another concern of mine definitely did ring true. There was, anyway, some excitement and some momentum building around Mercedes Mone. It did seem like people were turning on her in a non-TV heel sort of a way. Like you see a few pictures on X and it's her with the Hulk Hogan mustache, like, oh, can't lose to anyone, or anything like that. And like, it was such a rough debut. And it has been a bit of a rough go outside of WWE in getting any kind of legitimacy because of some injury problems. And then the debut in New Japan didn't exactly click the way that it wanted to. But there have been some very good matches coming out of this now. And a couple of feuds that have started to click. And so this was starting to be a heel character that was getting over in heelish type ways. This was a little bit more of a, ugh, type of a thing rather than a, oh, that dastardly Mercedes Mone. So I think you have a little bit of a concern of losing your audience with something along these lines when they kind of get invested in this underdog against a heel character that is very easy to not like anyway, and it just kind of doesn't go their way. So I'm a little bit worried that people might start to turn on this character one more time in a way that isn't necessarily productive to what they're trying to do. It was also a bit of a difficulty in building this show around a lot of Aussies, which obviously you do. It's Australia, and you get the big moment at the end, spoiler alert, but we just had about an hour and a half of Oceania wrestlers getting their asses kicked, right? Like a New Zealand dude loses. Oh, there's an Australia lost. Another Australia lost. So you had a bit of a rough go for the Aussie, oi, 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 featuring New Zealand on this card. And so that was a little bit tough when you're building a whole card around that. But that's just a side note there. Then we get into the hardcore deathmatchy match of the show, as it's Jay White and Cope taking on the Death Riders. It was a pretty good match. This was this one though was the opposite of the first one, where the first match you delivered a very entertaining match, and now a lot of different possibilities going into Revolution and possibilities people are excited about. You get that. No one's excited for the Death Riders. This didn't advance anything at all. No one cares about Copeland against Moxley. No one knows what's next for Jay White, but I don't think anyone's going to be excited about it coming off of this one. It was just another in a long line of the Death Riders winning and the babyfaces continuing to look less than. And I understand the want to build up a big heel unit. I do think you can have a "this is our night" moment where Lex Luger won the title, and then Tony Schiavone was screaming it. Ironically, Tony Schiavone on the call for this one. You can have that moment. The NWO doesn't need to win every match. You can have that. There was no reason for the Death Riders to win this match. None. There's a post-match beatdown thing. You can do that again if you really need to get the heat back for these guys. But if you, like, Edge spears Claudio and gets the win, how hard does that irreparably damage this otherwise on fire storyline? No, I agree that the first time Moxley gets his shoulders pinned to the mat, that should feel like a big deal. But Claudio, you put him in a match with Jeff Jarrett and he needed to cheat to win that. My guy can go through a table and get pinned by Edge. Like, I hated this whole storyline, and I have given it a lot of leeway, but this whole storyline with the Death Riders, it has lost so much momentum, and all because they are so afraid of booking these guys to lose any sort of match or any sort of build or any sort of anything. And now, like, it's dragging. It's really, really dragging, and no one's buying into Copeland winning, and we're all just ready for either Ospreay or Omega to get their championship match coming up at All In. And we're just killing time until then. But while we're doing it, it is so dull and so boring. It is like they took every lesson from the NWO and just mislabeled it okay, here's what not to do, here is what to do. And they looked at the what not to do as, okay, this is our checklist, let's go. Like, it's been awful. And this one didn't help that at all. Buddy Matthews taking on Kazuchika Okada. This is where I do need to say, I liked this show. I know there's a lot of negativity around it, and it is kind of feeling like where I was at with WWE when we started out here in Calgary Combat Central and stuff like that. Like, you go on, you watch the match, and it's fun, and you watch the wrestling, and it's great, and then you start to analyze it a little bit, and it's like, well, this is dumb. And so that's where I'm at with AEW. I really enjoyed this as a wrestling show, but then you look at it at a broader context, and it's like, this doesn't, the math isn't mathing on it. Matthews against Okada. This was, again, a good match. These two guys, I thought, brought it. And I thought there was a little bit of the story with Okada recognizing that there's a champion's advantage and him just not wanting to deal with Buddy Matthews. I don't think Buddy is incredibly elevated from this or anything like that. But I do think that this did show at least he can hang in this level. Here is my issue with it. Mid-card Okada has to stop. This is one of the biggest stars in the world in professional wrestling. And his first time coming to North America on a consistent basis. And we have him in the mid-card. We have him as a buffer match between the people being pissed about the Death Riders and getting ready for Tony Storm in a championship match featuring a belt that is either second or fourth in the pecking order, and we're not entirely sure where that is. Like, if the WWE had Okada, if he had gone there in free agency, and Okada was a mid-card intercontinental champion walking around calling everyone a bitch, we would be crushing WWE for this. And so I feel like the Okada situation is one that, and AEW doesn't get a lot of leeway from a lot of different parts of the internet, and I understand that, and I'm adding to it here. But I feel like AEW has gotten a bit of a pass on just how horrendously they have used Okada so far. Still, like, can he go 45 minutes at the Tokyo Dome or 59 minutes and whatever seconds went with Kenny Omega at Osaka Joe Hall? I'm sure if called upon, he could do that a couple of times. But I don't think he is the guy that he was a few years ago, but he is still a dude. There is still an aura around the Rainmaker, and they are chipping at that so badly with all of this. So we need to get this guy into that main, like, we're talking about the main title picture right now with Moxley and Edge and I understand Copeland, and Omega and Ospreay. Okada should be in that mix, and no one is discussing him for a potential championship match at All In. We got a bit of a buzz with Omega and Okada when Omega came back out after the Continental Classic. But, like, since then, there's no real talk of Okada being in anything. And I feel like they need to really pick up the pace with that guy. Then we get Tony Storm and Mariah May. This was everything it needed to be. It was a great match. The presentation was good. Luther as the usher. Nigel McGuinness with an amazing line where, if you didn't watch the show, Luther is dressed up as, like, an usher at the arena. And Tony Schiavone, who was on the call, who did amazingly, by the way. Tony Schiavone is on the call, and he was like, oh, he's dressed up as an usher the whole time. Nigel McGuinness is like, I don't know a whole lot about R&B, but I don't think that's very accurate at all. It's like, not the singer. That one got me. Nigel and Tony Schiavone were amazing all night. But Luther comes out, and it's a callback, and it's whatever, and it's all this fun. And then it felt like this match hit all the notes that it needed to, and it was great. The one thing I do think from it, though, is we get the quick roll-up finish, so I'm assuming we get now the rubber match coming up at Revolution. This feud has elevated both performers in a real big way, and I'm excited. If we just go right back to the rematch at Revolution, no problem with that. If there is any kind of a buffer and we try to drag this thing out until All In the summer, I think you could do that with these two. But I do think that this is probably ending in some kind of a graphic hardcore sort of a way coming up at Revolution, and then maybe a Mina Shirakawa feud with Mariah May comes out of that one. Now, a lot of the talk about the presentation after, a lot of talk about the small ring and everything like that. It's noticeable when you start the show. Like, it is noticeable that it kind of does look like someone's toy ring that they set up in trying to make some sort of a UGC thing for a ring company that makes toys. Like that, it looked like that. But then once the show starts, I didn't notice it a whole lot at all. I'm sure there are some finer points where you could notice, well, this guy had to even do this because of the small ring. Blah, 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 blah. I'm sure that I didn't really notice it. I thought Tony Schiavone absolutely killed it. I thought he did an unbelievable job. Him and Nigel McGuinness, I thought, were great on this. And again, like the wrestling, all of it, this was a really, really entertaining show. If you dive into some of the why for a lot of it, it gets a little bit frustrating. But the actual in-ring ability stuff that we saw, fantastic. Excellent show. I would go out of my way to watch this one.